So most startups need to be very frugal from a marketing standpoint, right? And which means that almost allocate little or no capital until you actually are able to procure at least a seed round of capital. So even when we get in, we try to stay away from companies which are very dependent on marketing dollars. Primarily because we just can't afford it. There's very little money to support the team, the basic infrastructure. So we've seen companies be very creative in terms of meeting every investor they meet. If they find that there's some connect, they will try to get some leads out of that investor. So they will say, why don't you test us with one of your portfolio companies, if they can cater to somebody in that particular portfolio. So we've had companies like WebEngage, for example, spend zero marketing dollars to date. So almost entirely using referencing, word of mouth, etc. If you can keep your customers very happy, they're likely to give you further references as well. So if you go to one e-commerce company, they like the service, it's likely that if you've created an impression which is good enough, they're going to talk to one of their buddies in some other company, because it's not necessarily, hugely competitive in that sense, especially if it's a complementary play. So I think your customers are a great source of leads, your investors are a great source of leads, and potential investors, that is. And I think, which is why sometimes in the Indian context, at least for B2B plays, we have seen that slightly more mature entrepreneurs are probably a little better off because their networks are better established. People do try LinkedIn, for example, as a means of pinging cold leads. It's not as simple unless you're connected to that person through somebody. And for all the perils of age does give you experience, wisdom, and a network, right? So you're able to reach out to a much larger set of people who trust you. So you can't send a cold LinkedIn invite and expect them to give you business. But if it's warm, if it's a referred lead, it's probably going to give you a lot more opportunity. People have done very creative stuff. They've actually sometimes gone and targeted, and most of these might be conducive more to B2B for right now. They've targeted potential decision makers using job databases. So, creatively subscribe to a job database, hit all the people in particular companies at a certain level by searching their resumes. And typically those job databases even tend to have phone numbers and email addresses, and could you reach out to them? So I think the question automatically suggests you need to have a little bit of jugaad, Indian style, to actually go and hustle and get leads without spending much money. And I sense that the smartest of the B2B players have done that in our portfolio before meeting us or after meeting us. On the consumer side, it's much tougher in my view. Because there's nothing like a consumer selling your product, which means it has to have created a wow, there has to be virality around the product. All of that is non-trivial, to be very honest. So once again, you can get friends to test it, you can get your ecosystem to test it, propagate it, but that's never going to hit the scale that you would like. So in the consumer side, I think it's creative PR, for example, is a way of marketing. You have something very interesting, then you get written about in the right forums. A lot of people try and crack TechCrunch. Even the Indian blogs are a good source of spike in traffic. My only warning there is you need to be ready that your product is in great shape before you run it into a very wide domain, because you don't want to risk a sub-wow performance when you reach the public audience. Cold email databases, fake Facebook fan pages, all in my view disaster. I think they don't necessarily get any meaningful data. They're a waste of time and effort. I think that kind of effort is better spent in going in, organically building a database. And what I've noticed, irrespective of B2C, B2B, is I think founders need to be strong opinion leaders in the ecosystems that they're playing. So if you're doing a health food brand, then be active on Twitter, be like a guest speaker on health issues, get published around a health supplement in a paper, things like that. So can you be a strong advocate and an opinion leader? Because by definition, if you're in most startup avatars, you're likely to be playing a role of a pioneer in some sense. can you take that pioneer role and sort of make a public persona out of it? Because that I think is very powerful. Where if people trust you as a voice in a particular domain, they're likely to buy your product.